everyone, it's Tambarambaa joining you again today. Thanks so much for popping into my channel. Today I've got another art by Marlene art journal page, and this one has bold bright colours and is just a little bit of grunge. So I started with my perfect size journal, and what I did was I actually grabbed the extra pages in the Kraft colour. Because I just haven't worked on Kraft for a while, and I thought I'd show you different things you could do with that. So I've added some white gesso just using a spatula, and I've actually added a tiny bit of water to the gesso just because I wanted it to be quite sheer. So you'll notice I'm going to add some paint onto this, and you will notice the areas where I have added gesso, the paint just sits on top of it, and that's what gesso does. It acts like a primer to your page. So the areas where I haven't put white and it drips down past the white, you will see it kind of disappears into the Kraft paper. So it's best when I find when I'm wanting to add colour, I want to add gesso first. Okay, so I started with Ballet, which is the pink, and I just kind of squeezed a bit along the top, and then adding lots of water to my brush, I simply just sort of tapped it until it started to run down my page. So I've now come in with the Mermaid, which is the aqua, and just kind of filling in areas, adding a bit more water and letting it drip down the page. You can create your own drips if you want it to drip in certain spots by just starting a little bit of paint there, and then the water will naturally follow that. So you can see down the bottom where it's kind of disappearing into the page a bit, those drips. So that's just what your gesso does, as I was explaining earlier. So then I came in, I think that's still just the Mermaid, just adding a bit more, building up my layers. And I am drying off in between, just because there's so much water on the page and I just don't want to create mud. So now I've come in with a Marlene stencil that she designed for the Crafters Workshop. This one's called Botanical Dream, and I'm just adding a little bit of your Glow, which is a neon, like a translucent paint, just adding a little bit in through the stencil with a makeup sponge. And then I'm using the Fauna and Flora die cuts, and I've grabbed all the flowers out, and I actually grabbed a couple of sheets of text paper just from an old book that I've had lying around, and I cut out the flowers from the text paper. So I've popped them aside while I work out what else I'm doing, and then I'm coming in with a sort of line stamp, border stamp from the text play set, and just using archival ink, I'm stamping that sort of to create that downward movement that's happening through the page. So I want to follow that along. So at this stage, I don't know, I want to use some of those stamps in the background, the little word stamps, but I'm just not sure what I'm trying to say with my page. So sometimes I need to know what I'm feeling, or I need to have a quote that gets me inspired. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going through the sticky quotes, and I know in my head that I'm using flowers. So I do eventually find one that says nothing lasts forever. That just suits something that's happening for me in my personal life, and also sort of flowers sort of are beautiful and then they die off. So that's what I've popped aside to use as my title, and as soon as I knew that I wanted to do that, it helped me choose the words that I wanted in the background. So I have used Hold On, which has got the black around it, and I've also stamped Be and Let Be, and I've repeated that stamp over and over in little clusters. So some of it's quite able to be read and some isn't, but that's what I wanted, just to create some depth in my background. So now you'll see I have popped on my Nothing Lasts Forever, and I actually did add a little bit of yellow happy into the mix there as well. Now I'm just playing around with my flowers, and I'm sort of thinking about where I wanted them, and it was at this point that I knew I wanted a bit more grunge on my page. So I've decided to add a black border. So this is the Pitch paint, and because you've got that beautiful fine tip, it's actually quite easy to draw and scribble with with the fine pen. So just make sure you've got a little bit of flow coming out, and then just do some shapes. So working quick is best. Don't think about it too much. So I just sort of, where I knew my flowers were going to be, I added some of the paint. I absolutely love the way that looks. That would be a beautiful page on its own. So that's actually given me a few ideas for a few more pages, just playing around. So yeah, so I am now going to add a bit of a stamp that's from the Romantic Florals set, and that has gorgeous paint splatters in it. So I often use those on my page, because I can kind of control, they look like paint splatters, but I can control where they are. So sometimes, you know, you'll splat paint and of course it will land straight on your title, and of course I'm not very good at always covering everything up, so they're really handy, those stamps. Okay, so now I will glue down using the sticky glue. I will adhere the cut out die cut flowers from the text paper that I had, and I'm just popping them over the center of the scribble ones that I've done. So I'm just going to build up my layers, and then I've also got some little I have a little basket of leftover bits, so if I pull out some die cuts and I don't use them, or I cut some die cuts and I don't use them, they all go in this little container, and it's just a little handy reference. So in there I had cut some flowers out of Marlene's collage paper, and I just hadn't used them in a project, so I've actually layered them as well. So I'm popping, so I've got my black scribbled flower, then I've got my text flower, and then I've got like a coloured flower, a smaller flower as well. So I'm just kind of layering in between, and I'm focusing, you'll see I focused the larger flowers towards the top of the page because I want it to have that sort of cascading feel down the page, so your smaller ones are towards the bottom. So I continued my black border around the edges, and then I am trimming, so I want some of my flowers to always hang off the edge. You want that helps create that movement across your page, so you always need to have things going off of the page just so it's not completely framed. You want it to have movement. So then I will just go over the top with the black paint just to cover up so it all ties together, and just popping a dot of each of the black paint in the center of the flowers, and then it's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with where it's at. Oh, and then I come in with some white, the lace paint, and just again look so it's looking like splatters. I think where this happened was I felt like that Nothing Lasts Forever was really white and it was standing out a bit too much. So to counteract that, I've scribbled some black lines around it, and just adding those white splatters back into the page ties that white all together. And that is it. So then I pop it in my album. I'll leave you with a few close-ups. Yeah, but it's a fun page. It's actually sparked a few ideas for future pages for me, and it's so much fun letting that paint run down your page and see what happens. So thanks for joining me. I'd love you to subscribe or leave a comment so I know you are here.